recorded, so please just an FYI to everybody joining the call. Like I mentioned, I'll put all the housekeeping details in the chat section. Akwasi also has a few questions to ask the audience. You can either unmute yourself to answer, just raise your hand, and when it's your turn, you can go, or just write the responses in the message section and I will read them out. So I think that will be all. We're trying to make this quick, sharp, and straight to the point. So we have just an hour. So as Akwasi is talking, if you have any questions at all, it would be really great for you to start sharing them now so that by the time we're having the discussions, we can actually touch on as much questions as possible, right? Again, thank you all for joining. And Akwasi, over to you.
Thank you, Paramin. I really want to thank you for this opportunity to share today. And thank you to .dwg for having this opportunity. As you know, my name is Akwasi Keith Akwasi McLaren. And first off, I wanted to ask a couple of different questions to everybody. As Fermin said, either you can write it in chat or you can also just unmute yourself. I guess my first question is just to get an understanding of what does it mean, what does a home mean to you?
Can I go first? Just because.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I think about a home, I think about, growth and the environment that I grew up in. And I think the very first thing is the fact that usually when you start a family, you're building a home because you have kids in the family. But as somebody who has also grown up and left, home, I've also had to build home for myself. And what makes sense for me as a person, that a space feels like home. And my home right now contradicts completely from where I grew up. And I feel like creating a home is creating a space that is actually yours, or something that is a reflection of the things that you value, the things that you love, that makes you feel comfortable, that makes you feel safe. And this is what I'm thinking.
Thank you. You're really bringing back the whole essence of exactly what my point was about it. In the sense that many times when people think home, they also can just think house. And I mean, a house is a structure, it's a building. But a home really works on so many different levels. It's not just the actual physical building. The home is a place for shelter, shelter from the elements, whether it be the rain, the wind, the sun, as we're in West Africa, mosquitoes. It's also a gathering space, and there's always a flow of different things happening through the home, whether it be family, friends coming and going, whether it be even food or water that's also coming through the whole space. So for me, that's why I think it's important for us to just take a moment to look at that. My second question has to do with what does it mean to be sustainable? Now, I see everybody's not jumping up and down too quick, but that's all right. I want to just talk about when it comes to the kind of definition of sustainable. Basically, when it comes to the dictionary definition, you're looking at three different elements when it comes to the environment, economics, social aspects, and about basically creating a balance between ourselves and the environment. So definitely a lot of times when people think about the idea of being sustainable, people think, yes, this is something very progressive. And definitely, I think this is a really good place to start and a first goal to set. But I must say at the very beginning, I want to just say and take this to another level where the fact is that to be sustainable, I don't think is enough. I think it's actually more important to actually look at it in another sense. If, for example, you were to ask me, how was my marriage? And I was to tell you that my marriage was sustainable. Doesn't sound so wonderful, does it? But at the same time, if I was to tell you that my marriage was regenerative, in the sense that, there's always a continuous flow of positive things coming and going, and it's coming out from me and also coming back towards me, then really we're moving in a better direction. So I just want to put that note out right now for everyone to think more about the sense that as you're looking about how you're going to create your sustainable home, let's think about it also being regenerative. So let's get straight to this. So first, I want everyone to join me on a bit of a journey of how my journey has been through sustainability. For those who don't know me, I was born and raised in Canada. I grew up on a farm. I grew up in my dad's workshop. I grew up with grandparents who were farmers. My grandfather had a workshop that was full of all kinds of things. He never threw anything out because you never knew when you might need something. I had a grandmother who also always said that it was also important to use everything at least twice. So this kind of mindset has always stuck with me throughout my whole life. As I grew up, eventually I went to university. I went and I studied architecture. I got my Bachelor of Architecture in University of Waterloo, as well as a Bachelor of Environmental Studies. When it came to doing my thesis, this was actually some of the steps that actually led me back here to Ghana. I did my thesis on, it was a low-cost, hands-on design trade school. So the whole idea was a school that was based in the Shanti region where the school had no money. So the first studies for the school was actually to design its own, design and actually build the school itself. This actually gave me a chance to really push some of the things I was already interested in. I'd done papers on composting toilets, compressed earth blocks, and really get more into the theories about sustainability. Just before actually finishing my studies, I got a chance to actually do a design for a hotel that's actually here. It's built here in Ghana in Buswell Beach called African Rainbow Resort. In this design, it actually gave me the chance to actually have a built project and to start studying the whole processes of natural ventilation. At that moment, I really didn't know how it all worked. I just studied the theories. But then when it actually came to actually building the whole building, I must say that the theories work. And I've even had people stay in African Rainbow who were complaining that they needed air conditioning. And by the next morning, they were complaining that they were too cold in the night. So definitely these theories, it was a chance to start to actually create this whole process and begin the whole thing. Following that, in 2005, I actually started to build my first build project here in Ghana. So I built a tree house. So in those days, I was really a purist when it came to local materials. I didn't really want to use anything that was artificial. I said, no, why am I going to do that? Let's really make it pure. So I built the whole house. The pillars were made with concrete, but apart from that, everything was built with wood, raffia, bamboo. And so I finished the house, beautiful house, lots of natural ventilation, everything's working well. But I must say that the first thing that happened when it rained is that the whole roof leaked because I had a wonderful, beautiful bamboo roof. This started to raise the point to me about the fact that appropriate technology is actually a better way to look at things. We don't need to be so stickler on only using local materials because that doesn't always work. And there's a reason why we should use some of the technology we do have. Following that, in 2009, I began my journey in actually creating a project called Escape 3 Points. So today you'll get to see some glimpses of what's going on there. But if you really want to see what's going on, definitely come on out and I'll give you a private tour. You can see all the details of what we really, really do. But this was actually a chance for me to really take all the theories that I'd learned over the years and really make them real and make build examples of alternative living. I found, especially in Ghana, Ghana's a very tactile culture. So it's important to actually build things that people can touch and feel, and they could actually really understand the concepts, other than trying to look at it in a video or in a book. I want to come back on this. Many of you will know this symbol. This is a Sankofa bird, which is an Adinkra symbol you find here in Ghana. I put this up for the fact that it's really important to look at the ancient wisdom. There's so many things that the answers are already there that are coming from those people who are already around. You know, the first day of architecture school, I was told There's no such thing as an original idea. Of course, this bruised the ego. Like, what? This is ridiculous. But I started to realize that it's true. Everything in the whole world has been done. Whether it's been by humans or by nature, it doesn't really matter. The point is that when you actually take these things and then learn from them, you can actually take them and use for your specific site and transform them in the best ways possible that work for you. So the same thing goes when it comes to things like, old Ashanti buildings that you won't see anymore, where the forms and structures no longer exist as a regular kind of construction, but there was reason and ancient wisdom to the reasons why they would do such steep roofs and things like this. Likewise, when it comes to even if you go outside to Europe, they do the same kind of things where they're using the same kind of earths and wattle and daub methods that end up lasting and the test of time. The tricks right now is about trying to see how we can make sure that we have all the small details to make sure that these things can last. So first off, I want to just kind of give you a sense of where we're going to go. We're going to look at about 6 different main points today. Okay, we're going to look at about assessing your site. We're going to talk about materials. We'll talk about cooling. We'll talk about energy for the home. We'll talk about energy for your body. And we'll talk about infrastructures and wastes. So I bring this image here for the simple fact that it's really important to look at our environmental conditions where we're coming to build. No matter where you're building throughout West Africa, it doesn't make a difference if which site you're on. It's important to really study the site itself. And the best is to be able to be on that site for a period of time to see through the seasons what can happen. This is the same kind of thing that I saw at Escape 3 Points, where I was thinking, oh, I'm going to build my bar here. And then when the rainy season came, I started to realize, oh, no, it's flooding. Or the river that I was told would never start to come inside, or the high tides that would come inside and also take out the structures that we were starting to build. Another thing to consider is the fact that you should see what kind of access you have to local materials. Every site has the materials. The materials are different, and easier access to certain materials are not and others. So looking at what are your basic necessities in terms of what you're looking to try and build. Another point that's also important to look at is what do you have in terms of access, in terms of artisans, like local artisans who have knowledge about buildings in your area. And then, of course, when it comes to those materials, thinking about the fact that you want to be looking at materials that are closer at hand, so it means easier access in case you're running short, and also helping to minimize some of your building costs by the fact you're not having to have extra transport costs. One of the first things I think is really important for everyone to consider is the fact is water. Okay, do you have access to water? If you're living in an urban setting, do you have mains? Are the mains reliable? If not, do you need to start looking at digging a hand-dug well? If you can't get hand-dug well, are you looking at starting to collect rainwater? If you're collecting rainwater or even having your hand-dug well, can you also process it and filter it in a way that you can actually be able to use it to drink it? Once you have water, afterwards, how are you going to make sure you can get that water to access all parts of your house or your site? Are you going to be able to pump it up so that it's gravity fed back down, so that, for example, when you have moments where you don't have electricity, you still have water? So all these different kinds of things are things you have to start thinking about when it comes to your site, and water is definitely precious. When it comes to building materials, one of the predominant building materials that's going on that's being used in West Africa are cement blocks. I have to say, I'm not a huge fan of cement blocks. I'm very much a fan of earth. Of course, when it comes to earth, there's many different ways you can actually start to build with earth. You can be building like with the Atapami styles. You can be doing rammed earth, compressed earth blocks. So depending on your situation, depending on your site, your access to labor, materials, tools, this will also help to relate on which kind of decisions you have on how you can actually start to be able to utilize earth. When it comes to earth and cement, it's very similar to each other in the fact that both of these materials are good. They have a lot of strength and compression. So typically, when you're using them for walls, you're holding up a roof. You know, you can take an earth block, you can take a cement block, you can hit it with a hammer, and both of them will typically break. So it's not the fact that the earth is any more weak than the cement. It's just a different kind of concept and idea. The other thing when it comes to the earth is the fact that earth is an insulator versus a conductor. We live in the tropics. Cement just takes on all the heat through the day and then gives all that heat off through the day and also through the night. So these kind of things you have to think about in the sense of how are you going to make your environment and your home comfortable? And are you looking at also having to spend more money on having air conditioning or things like this so that you can cool your house because you've used cement? So these are some of the factors that it's really important to look at and think about. Another material that's one of my favorites to use is bamboo. When it comes to Ghana, well, I would like to say even almost all of West Africa, we're a little bit behind when it comes to bamboo construction, but we're getting there step by step. You know, we're much behind Asia, where definitely they know, so they have centuries of knowledge when it comes to bamboo. And a lot of the things to do with bamboo is it's a misconception, the fact that it can be used as timber, can be used just as strong, but some of the details that are really more difficult to understand at the beginning is the connections. And once you can figure out the connections, you can start to make your building so much stronger and it can last the test of time. Ah, yes. I'm just giving you this quick image right now. This is the latest site that I'm working on right now. I'm actually currently working on a project at Lake Bosom Tree, where I wanted so much to be building with earth. I was planning it. I wanted to see about bringing my compressed earth block press there, but it's too far away. Looked at the options that we've been doing at Akwasi and building with some of the local artisans, but they all complained and said, no, it's not possible. You have, there's too many stones. So I'm like, well, what am I going to do then? If I can't build with earth and I have to bring the earth in. So instead, now, again, I looked at what we have. We have a lot of stones, so let's build a stone house. So right now, even actually from this, I'll be leaving and continuing to build a stone house and then starting to really explore all the possibilities of stone, because even the area there, there's so much stone, nobody's building with stone. And everybody's looking at us thinking that we're a bit mad. Like, how is it possible? But at the same time, as they see the walls come up, everybody's a little bit amazed and shocked. And I'm hoping that in the future, we'll start to see a lot more stone buildings popping up at Lake Bosom Tree so that people don't have to be worrying about bringing cement and blocks from outside to continue to build. Ah, yes. I also want to just take note to just talk about the fact that in your observations, look around and see what other things you have around. At Escape 3 Points, we've experimented with a lot of different materials. We've experimented with glass bottles, using actually water inside to help refract the light so that it helps brighten up spaces. We've taken plastic bottles to make walls, windows, roofs. So, you know, if you're trying to do things sustainably and also you're on a budget, you have to look at what you have and what you can use so you can maximize and make sure that you can also provide yourself a nice space. I want to discuss just a little bit more about energy right now. So of course, depending on your site, depends on what you have access to. You may have access to the mains, which a lot of times is the easiest way, but are the mains reliable? If not, what are the other options? Can you look at things like solar, especially being in the tropics, or wind? When it comes to things like solar and wind, of course, a lot of times in the past, it's been really scary to look at these kind of things, looking at all the upfront costs being very, very large. But at the same time, too, now the prices on things like solar have come down. And if you start to discuss with the right people who are also doing the installations, you can realize that it's not a question of having to do everything all at once. You can actually start to do your system piece by piece, step by step, and continue to add upon it. And also start to look at what are your what are the necessities that you need to really have. I mean, at the end of the day, is it refrigeration? Is it lighting? This also helps to minimize what you need to be buying in terms of your system, so you can actually start to have a system that will cover all of the things that are important for you. Now, again, we're in the tropics. It's hot. So I already touched on natural ventilation a bit before, and I've just put an image here just to let you know that the fact that there's lots of information out. You can find it on the internet when it comes to different methods of natural ventilation. It's not that complicated, and definitely when it comes to keeping your house cool, I definitely recommend to be maximizing as much as possible your natural ventilation, because if not, you're starting to look at other alternatives like air conditioning. But even in the sense of using natural ventilation, you can start to add fans to help move the air through the spaces and things like this. This way, maximizing the comfort of your home. Now, energy. When it comes to energy, of course, there's energy to fuel your home, but there's also energy to fuel yourself. At Escape, one of the things that we've integrated is the fact is we have an organic farm. So for me, I think this is one of the key points, no matter where your situation is, even if you're in an urban setting, even if you can be able to start to grow some of your own foods. Some of the things that you can actually help to nourish those foods can be coming actually from your own wastes. And so when it comes to your waste, there's different options. You could be using things like composting toilets, as we're using at Escape, or you can even be starting to collect your own urine, which that's a whole other conversation, which even when it comes to that, we're actually in the process of actually looking to change all of our composting toilet systems to actually have urine diverters so that we can maximize the amount of urine that we can collect for our farms. Definitely when it comes to these kind of things, there's some definite cultural nuances and does this feel comfortable and things like this, but definitely the more you learn more about the processes and understand that, of course, you're not just going to go and put your pee on your lettuce. You know, you have to make sure you do these things wisely. But if you use these things, you're actually starting to close the system and close the loop of all the materials that you have at hand, which afterwards you can actually be starting to throw away some of the resources that could actually help. Yes, oh yes, and I wanted to mention the fact that the same, even when it comes to some of our gray waters coming from showers and things like this, if they're treated correctly, the same, those same waters, which we have a lot of water that passes through the home, can also help to help with fruit trees, bananas, and the like. So I'm just going to end here in terms of just giving you a bit of what I wanted to come and say. I wanted to end off on this image and the fact that this turtle for me is a symbol in the fact that, you know, when we went to Escape 3 Points, we didn't know all the different things. We knew it was a beautiful place and things like this, but we didn't know, for example, there was turtles nesting on our beach. Once we were there, we started to realize all of these magical things that were happening. And I think that this is something that also everybody should consider when you're looking at the sites that you're looking to build your sustainable homes. You know, you don't need to overly complicate things. Look at what do you have easy access to, and then use the things you have at hand. So I think on that note, I think I'm going to pass it to Fermin, and then we can go through and discuss and answer some of the questions, and then and see what everybody else has to say.
Thank you so much, Akwasi. I mean, it was really beautiful working with the images you shared, especially about like building with stone and just trying to do things in a different way, especially with the things that are easily available around you, how that just generally reduces the cost of even the building itself, right? Which is something that is a big deal in this part of the world, and the fact that we don't really have a lot of um, good housing for people, right? At least for the general public. And I don't know, maybe this could be something that might be able to solve some of those problems sometime in the future, right? So there are a few questions that I have, and I can see that Rashid has shared a thought. So I'm just going to read it out to you, and then you can just like make a comment on it, tell us what you think, and all of these things. So Rashid says, I've had a hard time getting skilled craftsmen for stone masonry, especially for load-bearing walls. Locally, I only see stone used as cladding materials rather than structural. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on how to um help these craftspeople understand that this, stone walls can also be load bearing, and maybe there's some things that they can look into in terms of like technique.
Rashid, that's a great point. I think that Rashid, I'm guessing that you're also doing some different construction right now and looking at building with stone. And I would suggest that build something, build something to show them the examples of how they actually can do it. Because the same, even when it comes to earth blocks, a lot of times people think that you can only use it as infill. So there's a number of different techniques that are around in Ghana where people are using the earth, but they're doing the whole structure in concrete before, um, because they don't believe it has enough strength. I mean, earth can hold a two-story building without any problem. I've already built a number of two-story buildings, and I mean, years they're still standing there. So the same, when you're doing that, make sure that please take care, make sure you engineer it well, and build it. Even sometimes it's all right to even overbuild a bit to make sure that it's quite strong. Because the same thing, even with the earth, there was an incident that happened some years ago in Ghana where an earth building actually collapsed, which then, of course, sent waves of people talking and saying that, oh, earth is not strong. You see, now you can understand why it's not strong. But in the end, there was a problem with the engineering of the building. And the same, I mean, if people look at the examples of, say, for example, an earth building in the village, like an Atakwame or something like this, where if you have a leak in the roof, of course, an earth building, if you have a leak in the roof, the water's coming through the top, this is going to be your weak point, and it will cause a failure eventually. So it's those small details that are really important to look at. So definitely, I think for Rashid, try and see how you can try and build an example just to show them, because afterwards, once the masons see it, then the same, they're like, oh yes, I know, I can do it. But right now, the seeing is the believing.
Mhm. That makes sense, especially in this part of the world. I think they're less inclined to new things. Instead, you can show them evidence of the fact that, okay, this is something that has been done here before, and it is very, very possible. And this even also plays into some of the things that we like to do at Dot Works around like fabrications of materials. And sometimes we're like, oh, we're trying to try this new technique. And then, the carpenter would just be like, oh, no, 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 we don't do that here. And, we are like, actually, we can do it. Like, we just need to show you how to do it. And that's when you now start to see them, okay, 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 So that's a very good point. That's a very good point. So I also had a question around like compost toilets. When I was at Escape 3 I used it. But one thing that just kept coming back to me is like, this could also be like, this is just me from coming from my public health background. Public toilets as a way of providing toilet systems to more like the general public. But the issue that I that keeps coming to my mind is how do you keep them hygienic, especially if you are, in the public. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to any public toilets in this part of the world. It is nasty and a
Right.
big place of like infections and things like this. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on public compost toilet being a solution, if even it is a possible solution, and what kind of ways can we sort of make it hygienic?
So I'm glad you brought that up. And in fact, so throughout Escape, we've used the same kind of composting toilets many times. It's a Clibus Multron system. When I was studying composting toilets, for me, I was really looking at options where you don't have to go inside and start digging around. Like nobody wants to dig around in their own business or on top of it in time and anybody else's business. So for me, it was the best option in terms of something that was actually starting to actually do the composting, turning everything on its own.
Mhm.
So I learned about the whole urine diverter systems. And actually this year I spent some time with an older German architect. He's actually an eco-architect who's been building urine diverter toilets now for, I don't know, I mean, he's been doing all these things for like 50 years. And so he has now convinced me about the fact about doing the urine diverter toilets. In fact, he's actually built a toilet block for the school in Buzia. It's been standing there for 2 years. There's 500 students who use it. There's only 12 toilets. Now, definitely in terms of hygiene, the best, and of course, these toilets that they have there, they're squat toilets, which definitely, even in terms of using the toilet, is a much better way for us to naturally go to the toilet anyways. This way, you're also not touching anything. And so I went and visited this toilet, and there's only 12 toilets in the whole block for 500 students.
Mhm.
There's no smell. They collect 200 liters of urine every 2 weeks, which
Oh.
afterwards, as it's being collected and it's also like fermenting together, it's helping to kill all the bacteria within it. They actually take that and then they actually pour it off onto sawdust, making it extremely rich, like nitrogen-rich fertilizer, natural fertilizer. And as you're actually pouring it into the sawdust, it also helps to absorb all the smells. So you don't have all the smells of pee either. This way you can be able to use it for, and I mean, for myself personally, I always like to use it specifically on things like fruit trees and things like this. This way you're at the source of the roots, much farther away from the actual things you're eating. But the system is working. It's working very well. And in fact, the same man has actually helped to actually develop the same kind of toilets at the cultural center in Accra.
Mm.
And the same, it's a squat toilet system. So for me, definitely the least amount of touching you can do. I didn't add any slides about one of the things we've been doing at Escape, and because I wasn't thinking about it in this sense, but and that's the tippy taps.
Oh yeah.
During the, I learned, yeah, and so we have the tippy taps. For anybody who doesn't know the tippy taps, basically you've got about a 4-liter bottle with a rope and then a stick on the ground. It's hanging off another stick, and you step on the stick on the ground, and that pulls, and so it tips the bottle, and you have a little hole in it so that the water comes out, and then you can wash your hands without actually touching anything. So it's actually hands-free washing. So some of these solutions are so simple, the same as doing the squat toilets. And for me, I think it's the most important thing is to keep it as simple as possible. There's no need to go and overcomplicate these things. This way, then, there's no problems about hygiene. There's no problem about who's going to be trying to make sure everything is kept clean, and nobody's getting sick.
Hmm. That's a really good point. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so moving on to the next point. Her mentioned, gave a question saying, what would you recommend as the best alternative for cement blocks, looking at bamboo, rammed earth, bags, wood?
So it depends on who, like what kind of people you have working with you. I mean, when it comes to things like the earth bag construction, beautiful. Some of the fallbacks on it is it uses a lot of material, and you need to have a whole lot of friends to help pack all those bags, ramp them down, and things like this. So the same thing even with the rammed earth. I mean, I love rammed earth, but a lot of times you're looking at really big masses of walls, so you need a lot of materials and a lot of friends to help you to ram those things down. So in terms of earth, my favorite is definitely the compressed earth blocks. And even more so, not just the compressed earth blocks. I guess I should also mention the fact that stabilized compressed earth blocks, where you're adding 10% cement. So this way, if you have the rain touching it, it's not disintegrating. And as they're interlocking, you're dealing with Lego, which is really easy to use. I've heard that it's actually better to not have a mason to do it, because as the masons, they have their techniques of how to put things together. They're fine with like being able to plaster any kind of mistakes, or this is not quite straight and things like this. And the tricks when it comes to compressed earth blocks is to make sure that your very first course of blocks is nice and level. After that, you're just sticking blocks together and then filling in some holes around doors and windows. So it's actually a really simple technique, and you don't need to have any mortar in between them. Afterwards, you can choose to do a plaster, or you can point all the joints so that there's no insects or things coming in. But in terms of materials, by far my favorite would be the interlocking compressed earth blocks.
I like that. I like that. I mean, there's another question from Kwame saying, why are you not a fan of cement? And do you have any ideas how to promote indigenous materials?
Cement is expensive. When it comes to building, I mean, already we're having to import the cement. Afterwards, you're building something that becomes very, very hot. And why would we bring something from somewhere else when we already have the materials we need? I mean, everywhere in the whole world, we have earth. And on top of it, the earth you're using is not the organic earth. I mean, the organic earth, you need to keep that for growing. In fact, the organic earth is no good for building. So typically it means like scraping off the organic and getting to some of your base soils. And then even when it comes to the testing of it, the things are not that complicated, you know. It's a matter of wetting it, you know, squeezing it in a ball, dropping it on the ground, checking it to see how much clay or sand is in. So for me, cement is, it has its uses, especially when it comes to things like foundations. Because of course, when you're building with earth, you can't be starting to build all of your earth walls down into the ground. Which is why, you know, for me, I started looking at it like what are the future things that we can start to look at in terms of replacing some of that cement that's in the ground. Because at the end of the day, it's not just the cement and the buildings of it, the buildings that you actually create with it. Creating the cement creates a huge, it uses a huge amount of energy. So environmentally, cement is actually really not a good option. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it may be that we start to use like, you know, plastic as our foundations. I don't know, but definitely I'm hoping that, you know, we'll continue to develop in ways and means that we can make sure that we can start to eliminate some of the uses of cement and then minimize it. It's not to say we don't need to use it at all, but if we can minimize it, definitely we're all far off in a much better situation.
I mean, that makes sense. So it was a big, I remember like a couple years ago, maybe early 2000s, in Nigeria at the very least, there was a big like monopoly on cement, and it was an entire thing. And even that also affects like the quality of buildings that were being built at that time. There was a lot of buildings that were, what's the word when the building falls, and it, you know, and there was a lot of like health hazards around it, and just helping people know that there are more, or there are alternatives to these things, I think is incredibly important, especially in this part of the world where things are being imported, affected so much by like price inflations and all of these type of things. And then that means that houses or homes, apartments are even much more expensive than they need to even be, right? So it's a very good point that you just made. Her has another question again, or HER, sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. But she says, or they say, I'm not sure if it's so sorry. For compressed blocks, would you still then use steel rods, or would you have an alternative as well?
Still, at this moment, it's steel rods. I mean, you don't need a lot. It's basically you're looking at steel rods when it comes to around windows and doors, or as you're going up about every 3 feet, you can you add just what do you call it, a cement slurry in between. Where again, you see, you have to use some small cement to help to lock the whole blocks in the structure together. But for now, I mean, I've tested it a little bit when it comes to bamboo tension line, like tension rods. Afterwards, where I tested it, I didn't really want anything to fall down, so nothing's fallen down yet. And I know I remember reading papers on this in the past where, of course, even after time, you know, the bamboo within the cement actually can start to disintegrate. But supposedly, the void that you actually have in there, because of the shape of the bamboo, actually starts to also give it tensile strength. But I'm not 100% on this yet, so I haven't tested that. But definitely, as things continue, for me, I prefer to start to doing these kind of methods. But for now, I'm keeping things safe.
Okay. I mean, I think that makes sense. At the end of the day, it's the materials, even the, would I say, quote unquote, modern materials are not technically bad. It's just like how much of them do we need? How much of them are we using? That then becomes an issue to our environment, right? So, yeah. Kwame asks, any ideas on how to promote local materials?
We have to build more. We have to
Mm.
build more everywhere. We have to build things that are nice. There was a Ghanaian architect who unfortunately passed, Olario Olympio, and she had a whole theory She built some really nice high-end houses near Accra. And her whole theory was the fact of, if we build really nice houses out of earth, people will see them and say, I like that. I want that. You know, the concept of saying that, oh, we have to build, earth homes for the poor. This is not making people think that that's what they want. Then now you're feeling even more dysfunctional. This is not the way forward. Like, it definitely has to be in the sense of like building really nice things. Like there's people like there's the lady from High Birth who's building some really nice higher end homes with earth. These kind of examples really help to pave the way so that people understand that, you know what, as much as this is a material that was used in the past, definitely it's something that can be used in the future, and even more should be used. So for me, it's, yeah, we just need to build more. Everybody needs to build more.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, so my question to building more is that remember that I first started with housing a lot more people, because the housing situation is actually a big problem in major cities in West Africa at the very least, right? In Accra here, in Lagos. And the issues are the apartments or the buildings they're building are usually, they're not even nice, to be fair. They're not nice. They're usually very cramped, very tiny spaces. Sometimes you have to go up, it has to be like multiple stories to have enough space for people. And just taking into consideration a lot of these things, these constraints, I guess I'm just wondering how we can build more houses with local materials that people can admire and live in, that can exist in our everyday environment, or at least not, maybe not exist in everyday environment, but um, solve the problems that we are facing now, or maybe in the future, or something like this.
So I think for me, it's one of the things that I always appreciated when I first moved to Ghana. People don't, I mean, now it's different, but especially back in the day, people would build with what they had. You weren't going to the bank and getting credit to build your home. You build something small, you continue to build upon it. So the same, I mean, especially when you're saying that there's a lack of housing, you're absolutely right. And you've got a lot of young people who are also the same. They're trying to start their lives. So afterwards, it's if you have access to land, especially, I mean, now there's a lot of spreads going on in Accra, and I'm quite sure the same in Nigeria, where there's people who are getting farther and farther away from the center of the city. If you have a small piece of land, start with one room. It's not to say you have to build like 4 rooms all at once. I mean, that's a lot for anybody, but just to start small and step by step. And so, and the same afterwards, the other options are to build as collectives. I mean, when it comes to some of the traditional homes, like, the traditional like compound house makes a lot of sense. There's safety in numbers. When you're living together and as a collective, people keep eyes on each other. There's not a problem with somebody's going to come and steal, or someone's going to like not feel comfortable. There's still that sense of community in those kind of spaces. So afterwards, these are some things that definitely, I think that the idea of this definitely can be played with a lot, and look at some different options. Because I mean, we even for us, we've discussed different options about like, how is it possible for people to be able to start like doing more of these kind of things. And I think, opening up things like this kind of webinar where people can have these discussions, so that people with similar kind of thinking can actually start to come together and do these kind of things together. Because if you try to do these things on your own, I mean, like, I remember when I first started trying to build with compressed earth blocks, I studied all about this in Canada. I even found out that the one earth block press was made in Kumasi. I was so happy. I'm like, wow, this is even made in Ghana. I went to Kumasi, I went to KUNST. I said, listen, I want to build with earth. I want you to teach me. I want you to come down to Escape, and we're going to do this together. And they said, okay, no problem. And the money that they wanted for me to do this was astronomical. I said, look, I don't have this money. They said, yes, but there's less and less people who are interested and to take this course. I said, yes, I understand. So Why don't you come with me and help me to do this so we can build so that more people want to learn to do this? You know, because that's the thing, is that a lot of times these kind of things, nobody knows about them. You know, I mean, there's an amazing guy in Accra who's building with compressed earth blocks. The same, he just learned about it, and then now he's like this rocket scientist of compressed earth blocks, doing different colors, and he cannot. As soon as people now start to know about what he's doing, he can't keep up. So that's the thing, is it's right now it's a bit of a niche, but I mean, it definitely can explode. It's just a question of more people understanding the importance of how we could do it, and then just starting to do it ourselves. I mean, when it comes to even the block presses, I mean, I've gone through different series. I was with just a normal compressed earth block press at the beginning. It's beautiful. It worked. Now I started working with another manual one with the interlocking blocks. It's pressing 2 at a time. I have to say, it's my favorite press. I mean, 2 blocks at a time, some sweat, and like 5 people. You can blast out a lot of blocks in a short amount of time. At the same time, I also have a hydraulic machine where I said, okay, let's try and see how we could also try to start pushing this out, which is another one of the projects on the side. But realizing the fact that, of course, you know, when you have extra machines with extra things, with hoses and hydraulics, you know, extra problems can come. So it also started to bring me back to the fact of the simplicity of, like, you know, keep it simple. You know, a simple, solid machine can press out everything very quickly. And, you know, if you have 5 people, one person's sick one day, I'm sure you might be able to find one other person to help join you and be able to get your blocks made.
Okay. So the time is running out, but just
Oh, yeah.
one point on that, because I also have like a small project I have in my mind that hoping that I can do. I want to build like a home for my mother, and I want to use like local materials, but this will be in obviously Lagos, Lagos, Ogun State in Nigeria. And the question I had was, you mentioned about like having people, do you like, in terms of your own experience, are these things that you have to like monitor, like you have to make sure you're there to keep an eye on what they're doing? You know, you cannot close your eyes for a second. You have to like 100% monitor every single thing that they're doing, you know. So that's just to build off of what you were saying. And then there was also another question about how do you then maintain some of these local materials?
How do you maintain the local materials?
Yes.
So it's not as complicated as it seems. You can actually turn your head and turn your eyes. It's the process is very simple. So as for that, you don't need to worry too much about that. When it comes to maintaining the local materials, when it comes to earth, for example, there's just different considerations you have to look at. You know, if you start to make your blocks, it's not like cement blocks where you can leave them out in the rain. You know, you have to make sure you cover them. You give them the 2 weeks drying period before you start to build. There's just small details like this that are important to consider. But apart from that, it's not that complicated to do.
Okay. Okay. And in terms of maintaining, like just generally, once you have the building, what are the things that you need to like you need to think about in terms of like maintenance for long term, like longevity of the buildings?
Make sure your roof is not leaking. You know, this is the biggest problem. If your roof is leaking, your earth walls will fall down. But if not, I mean, the first structures we built at Escape are 16 years old. Nothing's happened to them. They're perfectly fine. My house that I built there beside is 10 years old. Nothing's happened to it. It's perfectly fine. It's not moving. Rain comes on it, wind comes on it. It's perfectly fine.
Okay. 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 So there's a question here from Ima saying, considering your experience with earth construction, what are some of the disadvantages and how can it be improved?
Disadvantages is just take care to actually check your materials well. I know that one time when I was starting to press some earth blocks, they were doing some road works on the main road in, and the contractor offered us some soil to make it easier than us having to go and dig from the site where we were getting it from. I started to realize we were having difficulty pressing the blocks, and then realized there was too much clay content in the soil. So beware of these kind of things. Afterwards, we were able to make the corrections, add some sand, make sure we could get the soil balanced out again. But it's small things like this you have to just keep your eyes on. And the same, even where whatever site you're getting your materials from, always continue to keep an eye and see that the materials you're getting from are the exact same materials. Because even from one site, if you move over a little bit, your materials can vary slightly.
So, okay, this is just a beautiful back question about like making sure the soil is. Do you have like, I don't know, a guidebook that people can go and look through and say, okay, these are the things to look for in your soil. If you want to use ramp earth, I don't know if you have some sort of a guide. I know it would be too much to go into right now because we're out of time.
Just Google it. I mean, some of the first things I was learning about was from some books came from Grenoble in France, where they actually have a whole center where they study earth construction. But afterwards, the ways you can even reach out to me. It's not that complicated. It's very simple. It's like water and like squeezing like clay in your hands. It's not. I mean, I've been told that it's supposed to be very complicated, but it's not.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Rashid says he wants to come visit Bosom Tree Cakeboard next week, I believe. And he wants to come see your project. He'd like to learn and speak to you. Are you okay with him reaching out to you maybe on Instagram, or do you want us to share like your email or something?
No problem. He can reach out to me on Instagram. I don't have a problem.
All right, Rashid, you can reach out to him on Instagram. A final question. How much cheaper is it considering scarcity in work? How cheaper is it considering scarcity in workmanship? Ima, are you asking how cheaper is it to use rammed earth, considering scarcity in workmanship? Is that what you're asking? Yeah, okay, yeah. So how cheaper is it to use rammed earth, considering scarcity in workmanship? But I mean, from what you're saying, it just sounds to me like it doesn't really require any technicality on the side of.
So rammed earth, for me, I've never done any rammed earth. Rammed earth requires certain materials. You need to have the formwork that you can use for actually holding the structure when you actually ram the earth. And so this is part of the whole initial costs. For the compressed earth blocks, it's a question of having the machine. Or for example, if you're even in Accra, where there's people like Sam from Jew Intel, you can actually just buy the blocks and actually just build with the blocks themselves. So in terms of costing, it's difficult for me to tell you the exact amounts. But if I just tell you that the fact that when you go to build each block and you only have 10% cement versus a cement block where you're looking at at least 30% cement in your block, right there, that shows you some of your cost savings. So, I mean, the earth typically, you're looking at buying fill. So it's cheap material. So this is the thing, is that if you just look at it and in terms of just material sense, afterwards, labor is labor. But in terms of pressing the blocks, if you're doing cement blocks, you're gonna have to press them anyways, or you're gonna be buying the pre-made ones. So again, you're coming at it at cost. So definitely, no matter which way you look at it, it's definitely a lot more expensive to build with cement.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we have to close off now. Thank you so much, Akwasi. I think that this was a very lovely conversation. We're hoping we can have you again sometime soon in the future. And thanks everybody for sharing your thoughts, asking questions, making this a beautiful conversation. Sorry, a beautiful conversation. Let me see. People are asking questions. Asari raised their hand. You can unmute yourself if you wanted to make a comment. And yeah. So yeah, that's all. Thanks everybody so much for taking your time and just listening to us. This will be recorded and shared. So feel free to follow us on Escape 3 Point. I shared the links to both platforms, so you can follow us. We'll be sharing the recording online on our social media pages on YouTube, and we'll also share with Akwasi so that you can also post it on the Escape 3 Points platform. So yeah, thank you everybody. Have a lovely evening. Enjoy Eid. And like if you have any other questions, just like let us know. Let me share. Yeah, and Rashid, please feel free to send Akwasi a DM on Instagram. More than happy to respond to you and all of these things. Before I log off, I think Asari, you have your hands up. You want to say something? Okay. All right, no problem.
I mean, I just can
Thank
I just
you.
want to I want to say a couple of things. I just want to say first, I want to give a big thank you for everyone's time today. That you're giving me this opportunity to share some of the things that I've been blessed to have learned, and I want to say thank you to all those who've actually shared with me, for me to actually have all these different things and knowledges. I hope that this has helped to inspire everybody here to also be building your own sustainable homes. And then definitely, yes, if you want to reach out to me, you can even reach out to me on my Instagram, Akwasi McLaren. It's just my name. You'll find me. So, but thank you so much.
All right. All right. I mean,
Thank you.
people are saying so many things here, which is so interesting. You know, you have people saying we should talk about more technical things moving forward. So yeah, I mean, we try to do this every month. So just look out on our pages. We will announce what we are talking about next month. And feel free to DM us if you have any questions or if you think there's something you want us to talk about. We will definitely look into that and try and talk about it, bring the right people in. I want to give a special shout out to Eunice who put all of this together. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, everybody have a lovely day, have a lovely evening, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thank you.